Welcome back. Agapitus Hausiku, Executive Director of Out-Rights Namibia, has been instrumental in advocating for LGBTQIA+ rights in Namibia. Tonight we will discuss the landmark ruling by the Namibian High Court, which declared the common law offences of sodomy and unnatural sexual offences unconstitutional and invalid. This ruling marks a significant step forward in the fight for equality and human rights in Namibia. Mr. Hausiku, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nina, for having me on the show.
Just to
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you too.
Thank you
There's
so much.
an echo. I don't know whether because I'm on the speaker with you.
It sounds fine on our end.
Okay, now that's fine if it's okay.
To start with, Agapitus, talk to us about how you believe this ruling will impact the lives of the LGBTQ+ individuals within Namibia.
Okay, firstly, when we had the sodomy law, it created a lot of barriers for a lot of the community with regard to accessing healthcare services, especially because if you're speaking about healthcare services for key population, there's a population groups that are classified or so identified that experience stigma, discrimination, and other barriers in accessing healthcare services as a result of these punitive laws. Now, the first step to us in eliminating this law will ensure that in terms of programming, all population groups are catered for with regard to having access to services. So to me, that is a key milestone. Secondly, if we're speaking about policies that are made in Namibia, you're talking about discriminatory policies where certain population groups are not considered. So the GBV Act doesn't include same-sex sexual relationship as a result of the sodomy law. You're speaking about the Labor Act that removed same-sex relationship for same-sex couples as a result of the sodomy law, and many, many others that are promulgated that doesn't take into consideration other relationships within society. That means that individuals are excluded. Now, with this law being decriminalized, that means in terms of our policy formulation, you're speaking of an inclusive process where policies are made that caters for all sectors of society. So that is another element that we are looking at. And also just generally as individuals, because you are in a society, there is a piece of legislature that speaks about criminalizing your sexual act and sexual conduct as an individual, as an adult individual who is in a consenting sexual relationship with somebody that you have so chosen to be with. So having this law decriminalizes gives you that space to really be free like anybody else to love the person you would want to love. So to me, these are some of the elements that we are celebrating with regard to the ruling of the court.
What challenges do you perhaps foresee in implementing this ruling?
I think I don't really want us to foresee challenges with regard to implementing. I mean, it's a high court ruling. What the government is supposed to do is to put mechanisms in place to ensure that laws and policies that contravenes and contradict the rulings are done away with. That's the first step that we are supposed to be doing with. It's not supposed to be an element of resistance. It's supposed to be, it's responding. If Namibia is a country that's ruled by law, we are supposed to abide by the ruling of the court and ensure that step needs to happen starting from the government. But the challenges, like we are already seeing, is the response from certain sectors of society that are not, it can be seen from the previous ruling that happened last year on the 16th of May, the reactions and the backlash from certain sectors of society. You can also see some politicians and the religious leaders being opportunistic with regard to this ruling and trying to capitalize. We have election this year. I believe politicians will make use of this ruling to really try to garner support from certain supporters and sectors of society that support and that might not be able to understand that But one challenge that I always see is we have the Constitution that a majority of our people do not understand, or the interpretation thereof. So the education or civic education around the Namibian Constitution needs to be done, because if you have a constitution that is not understood by a majority of your population, you are sitting with a problem going forward when rules and ruling of this nature are made, because the interpretation and understanding of that ruling create chaos within society that do not understand the constitution. And that's one element that we are supposed to be focusing on, educating our public to have an understanding on the constitution which the majorities are not having. Because if you understand the Constitution, I do not foresee a way how a ruling of this nature will be a challenge to you. Because the Constitution in its preamble clearly says the dignity of every individual shall be inviolable. So it's respecting the dignity of everybody irrespective. The fundamental human rights and freedom in Chapter 3 of the Constitution doesn't say certain individual only are supposed to enjoy those freedom. They are supposed to be enjoyed by every Namibian. So to me, the challenge is understanding the constitution that we have. We have this progressive, liberal constitution. It was made by some individual who claim to have written this constitution, by they themselves create chaos and confusion. So that is what I think that we are supposed to look at. What is our constitution saying, and how do we ensure that there is understanding of the constitution being the supreme law of the country going forward?
Do you believe that this ruling will impact, and you touched on this a bit earlier when you said that there has been sort of negative comments from some corners of society. So do you believe that this ruling will impact the stigma and discrimination that's faced by the LGBTQ plus individuals in Namibia? And will this impact be positive or negative in your view?
I don't think the ruling provides a sense of security legally, that in case you are to take recourse, there are mechanisms that protect you, because previously, on the basis of your identity and sexual orientation, there wasn't really enough legal room for you to stand and take recourse on. Now with this ruling, we have legal basis in order to challenge any event where an individual's right is violated. The first step to us is actually key. So secondly, in terms of addressing stigma and discrimination, it's challenging, because this is about changing minds and hearts of people, and also educating people to understand issues that they find complex. A lot of our people, especially if you move in many areas, I don't want to say the north or the northeast or northwest, let's look at the areas where we have traditional communities and traditional leaders. The issues around the thing is of mixed interpretations and mixed version. It's not that it's not been part of society. I'm coming from a background where these situations has been there, but a majority of the community members faced a lot of stigma and discrimination, and they were excluded from a lot of opportunities that are there. So you're finding a lot of young people that identify as such who are now having opportunities, which creates a conducive environment for them differently from many others that are especially in rural areas. So the stigma will not fall off as a result of the ruling, because the minds, traditional norms, and how societies look at these things differ. So that is actually where organizations still need to come in and create some element of awareness and education. It's not like it's now an easy way going forward as a result of the ruling. It's still, well, the community is now recognized. The courts have given them the rights that are being enjoyed by others by taking away this discriminatory punitive law. what needs to be done now so that there is acceptance and tolerance within society, so that those members of society come, not to say that they are integrated. There's an element of integration that one anyway is supposed to look at, because if you look at a lot of them, they face segregation. They are not generally part of the general society, so they are excluded. How do we ensure that these individuals are part and parcel of societies going forward, that they don't face unnecessary stigma and discrimination now that we have a legal environment that is tolerant and accepting towards them?
Agapitus, how do you see this ruling contributing to the broader fight for human rights and equality in Namibia?
This is very positive. I actually, I don't know whether to say I like our courts, not that we are celebrating the way the courts are responding to a lot of these challenges, but to me, this is actually very encouraging and positive when we speak about human rights related issues that needs to be taken up apart from this one. So we now need to see which other issues are there within society that creates discrimination, not only towards the LGBTI community, but you're speaking about other people, people with albinism, you're speaking about women. There are still a lot of issues that women faces as barriers and challenges within society. All these are still issues that we are supposed to look at and see how do we work on them to ensure that we're really building a society that is tolerant, a society that is inclusive, a society that looks at every human being with the same lens. So it has created an opportunity for us to explore other avenues and really see that, where we are still lacking, where certain sectors and members of society still feel that their rights are violated, how do we come into that space to really ensure that the rights and dignities of every individual that sits in a space of feeling neglected is considered.
Just very lastly, what message from Out-Rights Namibia do you have for the LGBTQ plus community in Namibia following this ruling?
I think to us it was a message of relief and celebration and joy. I mean, it's a struggle that we happened even before ORN was established. We had organizations that were trying to get into this space. We'd actually also want to really say the Friedel, not that I'm mentioning his name, the person that took it up upon himself, because in the previous period we were discussing as to how do we challenge. It's not that we just decided to go to court. The discussions around going to court emanated from leaders in the countries not willing to listen to us. Even at this moment, we'd written letters to the speakers of parliament, to the chairperson of the National Council, wanting to engage them so that their discussion, it's not like the LGBTI community has not been willing to engage leaders in this country. They are not even willing. We've written letters to the Prime Minister to seek for an audience so that there are discussions, and they all didn't respond to this letter. So we decided, okay, fine. What other approach are we supposed to take? We'll take the legal approach. But initially, we were all looking at engaging the public and having a discussion so that the debate is through Parliament to repeal the law. But then we we saw as a result of the reaction from the members of Parliament that that approach was not going to work. We need to take the legal recourse. So to us, it's celebration. But it's not like we didn't want to engage. We wanted to have dialogue at a level with leadership of the country to see as to how some of these laws can be repealed. If you can recall, there is a document that is lying at Cabinet, submitted by the Law and Reform Commission that looked at this absolute law. So there was an article, or there were articles when this document was submitted in Parliament by the Minister of Justice. The uproar there in Parliament was about, they would want to repeal the Sodomy law. I mean, if you look at this document, it's about 600 pages, and they were looking at about 400 pieces of colonial laws that needed to be repealed. But people only focused on one, that is the Sodomy law. So at that stage, we decided, or we felt, public through Parliament will not be able to listen to us. The only way that we can do it is to use the Constitution that guarantees the freedom of fundamental human rights and freedom to every person in the country. As long as you are a Namibian citizen, you need to enjoy the same rights as everybody else. When people, my colleagues are like, Agapitus, we are paying taxes. Why must we pay taxes if we are not accepted as members of society? And some of these people even making noise in the community don't have even tax numbers. You find a lot of the LGBTI community working, greatly contributing through taxes, working, greatly contributing through their professional lives as citizens of this country, but you have a piece of legislature or a piece of law that criminalizes their act. So to us, we are celebrating the ruling and the outcome. All that we are hoping for is that we as a nation can look at it from a point of ensuring that there is safety, because we also know there are WhatsApp groups all over discussing, others trying to call for public demonstration against the ruling. I mean, it's their democratic right to demonstrate.
Right.
But what we are saying is the state still needs to ensure the security of every member, that as a result of this ruling, nobody or no lives must be at harm due to these individuals that are planning to host these public demonstrations. So we do not want to see a situation where every member is now in fear as a result of ruling, because there are some individuals who would want to take law in their own hands, misinterpreting the ruling. So to us, the atmosphere still needs to be peaceful so that people are able to enjoy their rights and dignity like anybody else.
Agapitus, I thank you for your time this evening. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Daily Roundup.
Thank you, Nina. It was a pleasure to be on the show with you guys.
That was Agapitus Hausiku, who is the Executive Director of Out-Rights Namibia, speaking to us on the Sodomy High Court ruling that happened last week. We'll be right back with some more.